We're filming Catch 22 here in sunny Calgary, Alberta, Canada, a pro wrestling mecca, a place of pilgrimage for wrestlers and fans alike, not just for the reverence they feel towards Bret or Owen Hart, but for the reverence they feel towards their father, Stu. Stu Hart's Dungeon is one of the premier training grounds of the 20th century for professional wrestlers, creating countless stars, big money draws, and some genuinely tough men. In the world of catch wrestling, legitimate wrestlers have a mecca of their own, and it's a rundown shack in the northern English town of Wigan. Riley's Gym, operated by the venerated Billy Riley, a hardened wrestling champion and practitioner of the brutalest form of human competition imaginable, trained and hardened locals and internationals alike in the art of Lancashire catch wrestling, and inspired reverence all over the British Isles, continental Europe, the Americas, and of course Japan, where his greatest influence would ultimately be found. They set standards of competition and reinvented both shoot and work professional wrestling in the latter half of the 20th century, and into the 21st century they have continued to inspire and mold champions in both catch and freestyle wrestling. This is the story of Billy Riley, Roy Wood, the men they trained, the generations of influence they've spread across the globe, and the ramshackle shed that barely stood over these warring working-class heroes. This is the story of the Wigan Snake Pit. All right, gang, welcome back to Catch 22, the podcast about wrestling, MMA, and where the two intersect. I'm here with my good friend Javi. We got Jimmy on the board.
Jimmy!
We're in frigid, cold Calgary, Alberta, minus 19 Celsius this morning. Don't do it. Don't come. We don't want you. We don't care about the election.
The city's
you have
the
to
best.
stay there.
Ignore him.
You voted him. You have to stay there. Don't ruin our city. It's your fault. Anyway, today we're talking about Riley's Gym in Wigan. We're talking about the infamous Snake Pit. Now, Javi, what do you know about Riley's Gym, the Snake Pit?
Not a ton specifically, but it is infamous in the martial arts world. As soon as you get into MMA, you start, like, you talk about Josh Barnett. You hear some of I kept on hearing some of my favorite fighters, and they all were coming from the Snake Pit. So I was like, looked into it a little bit, and it's just the people that have come out of that gym, the level, and it's just this tiny little place. Yeah, it's definitely one of the coolest gyms in the world, really.
Oh, without a doubt. Like, it's attained a kind of mecca status in Japan, particularly, as the place to train.
Jesus.
Because of the students that came out of it and their influence in the world. And it took the Snake Pit name in the 70s in Japan. It was really just known as Riley's Gym. And it was a ramshackle shed in northern England and Wigan. And
but hasn't it been around since
It's been around since 1948.
48.
Yeah. It's been around since 48, and it was started by a guy named Billy Riley. And Billy Riley is super interesting.
Yeah.
He was born at the very end of the 19th century, championship wrestler. I think he was the world or the British welterweight champion or something for like 18 years.
Jesus Christ.
And he came out. He was born at the perfect time to be involved in the golden age of global catch wrestling, because what they did at the time, catch can wrestling, had just kind of taken over the wrestling world as the most popular form and the most like dominant form in competitive grappling.
Because we were finishing up from the last episode. We were in like the 1920s.
We were in the 20s.
Yeah. So from there, they go to this trio. They do their thing. They're adding a lot more popularity to the sport. And now by the time we're getting to like the close to the 50s, it's in.
And I'm not even talking the 50s yet. Okay. I'm talking the 10s.
The 10s
and 20s.
Of course.
He's in England.
Right.
He does go to America and do some training and do some bouts, of course. But catch, as we know it, like the popular style of catch that would eventually become slam bang Western style pro wrestling with the Gold Dust Trio and then a work, fundamentally. That is from the home area of Billy Riley. That is Lancashire style.
Right.
And they are in Lancashire.
Okay.
And he's being trained by guys like Wino Kettinen, who's like a Finnish master wrestler, and Pops Charnock, who would be like the Farmer Burns of England. Like a very, very important fundamental wrestler. And they're catching Lancashire style. So there's a ton of different styles of wrestling at this time. There's Irish collar and elbow. There's Cumberland wrestling, which is like, and there's jacket wrestling, which is kind of like gi wrestling.
Oh shit! Okay.
There's all sorts of different styles, and the Lancashire style catches on because these guys are the best. Because nobody can hold with them, and there's reasons for that I think fundamentally are it's a mining town in northern England, which people. Is, I mean, I'm not going to try to explain England over here to Jimmy, but I think for a lot of England's history, there's been a great divide between the south and the north as far as it still exists.
Like you said, as soon as I hear Wigan, it's literally like, as a southerner, you're like, shithole.
Nothing.
Nothing. I would never go there. Literally never. There's no reason for me to ever go there. Even just to see what it's like.
I've
never been.
North is more poor, south is more rich.
Yeah, south is speaking,
but it's really what they're referring to as London, because the south coast of England is also really poor. Really poor.
Okay. London is kind of the fiscal center, the cultural center, and then especially in the north, but again, southern coastal, you're getting into textiles, manufacturing, a lot of industry work.
Right.
Like if you look at like Wigan in the 50s, you would assume they were just filming a Christmas Carol there. You know what I mean? Like you would assume like it doesn't look that different from Peaky Blinders. You know what I mean? Like it's still gray and industrial council houses, and these are miners and molders and hardworking men. Yeah. And it's also they're close to a port.
Oh. Okay.
So a lot of these guys are seamen. They're Navy guys. They're working in shipping. They're going on boats around the world. And this is a kind of a pretty boring way to make a living. There's not a lot of entertainment.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of wrestling. And the other great thing is that these guys are going around the world. They're going around largely the British Empire. So they're picking up little pieces of the local wrestling styles.
From the different styles of
Gusti and Pelwani and India, and they're picking up things from, whatever convict wrestling they're doing in Australia. Like whatever weird holds they're learning, they're bringing back. A lot of thumb work in the convict wrestling. A lot of thumb work. So they're picking up all these things, Irish collar and elbow, when they go over there to destroy them. Lots of different things that are being brought back to Lancashire and being incorporated because they're not afraid of adding things to the style.
Okay.
Which is how, these guys are picking up stuff from Kimura.
Right.
These guys they're picking up everything. They're inviting people to come wrestle them. They're traveling to go wrestle them. They're in South Africa. They're in Sweden. They're going everywhere. So this starts to create this culture of extremely hard men making the sport as brutal as they can. And this is where Billy Riley comes out.
And this is going to be different then from something like from the States, right? Because you have access to a whole just different world.
Yeah,
that close
you're
to
not
Europe,
separated.
Right? Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a lot, even today, as far as, culture, travel, things like that. Once you get to Europe, you can get your $40 flight and go anywhere else in Europe. It's fine.
Incredible, yeah.
So it's a lot easier for these guys to pick up styles, and their quality of life is awful. And wrestling is a way to get out of it. If you get good enough at wrestling, making your wagers, maybe you don't have to go down to the mine anymore.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the world that
he's born into.
Billy Riley comes up with. His mom manages a pub, and that's where he learns to wrestle, is inside the pub. And by the time he's 14, his mom is organizing matches for him so that she can put bets on him because he's such a good wrestler that, like, they're doubling their income every year just by having him beat up an old man in a pub.
And he's a big, I mean...
He's
like
not a particularly big man.
No?
No. Billy...
Again, I know someone in his later years.
You're probably thinking of Billy Robinson.
I am, sorry.
Yes, I'm talking about the guy who trained Billy Robinson.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Billy Riley. So we're still in the 20s.
Jesus Christ. Right.
We're still really early on in the 20th century. And this guy is, like... He's a welterweight.
Okay.
He's not a big man.
Okay.
But if you see pictures or videos of him in his older age, which there is some stuff, they did some ITV documentaries about Billy Riley, and then later on about Roy Wood when Roy Wood took over the gym. His face looks like raw meat. You know what I mean? Like he's covered in scars, the cauliflower ears, and I don't imagine there was any time in Billy Riley's life where if you ran into him in an alley, you'd feel good about it.
Right.
Like maybe the week before he died, you'd probably still like let Mr. Riley go.
Right.
Let him pass. Get out of the way.
Cross the street maybe a little bit.
And he spent most of his life training on pub floors and gravel pits and soccer rugby fields. Eventually, they want to have a gym, so they don't have to train outside anymore. So Billy Riley opens this gym after the same year he retires. He was the middleweight champion.
Okay, middleweight champion.
For about 18 years, spanning 3 decades. All right, so pretty good. Pretty good career here. And again, it's important to note, wrestling always had the ability to be worked. It's not like he never worked a match.
So that was going to be my question.
He knew how to work a match, but most of his matches certainly were not worked.
Right.
Because also working never really works in Lancashire, probably until about the 80s. It's like a classic thing there. It was like you couldn't bring show wrestling, which is what they called it.
This is too hard. Like we're doing the real shit here.
Everyone here knows wrestling.
Right.
It's like you have a brother, you have a cousin, your dad, your uncle, who you've seen him wrestle.
Right.
So you know that the Irish whip to back body drop isn't gonna work. Or English style, the artful dodger, the Johnny Saint artful dodger where you're slipping between people, you know that's not gonna work. So they couldn't sell it. It looks great. I love it. I like it way more than real fighting. But wasn't really gonna get over there. So in 1948 he retires, and that's the same year he opens up the gym. Now the gym is on a rented piece of property. It's a ramshackle, bare brick, no heating, no facilities.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there's a mat on the floor. There are stories Billy Robinson tells about we got an electric heater. And then the whole game became trying to back your opponent's ass up under the heater to burn his ass and have a good laugh. You know, because it was something else to do there. So this is kind of, it's a gym that doesn't have heating or plumbing or anything close to mercy. There are no mercies in Billy Riley's gym. And he starts pumping out great competitive wrestlers and attracting wrestlers from elsewhere. So that's how, Karl Gotch, Karl Istas, Belgian Olympic wrestler. He is told by a local Wigan guy he's wrestling, Billy Robinson's uncle, actually, you got to come wrestle at Riley's gym, because that's where the best wrestling in the world is. Karl Gotch at this time is already an Olympic wrestler. Went to the 48 Olympics, I believe.
And at this point, the Olympic wrestling is basically freestyle wrestling?
Greco.
Or it's Greco?
This would be Greco-Roman.
Okay.
Which, again, Scandinavian.
Yeah.
So he goes over there and he just doesn't win for 3 years. Karl Gotch is a remarkably conditioned big man, known for
he's a freak
a hell of a squat on him. You know what I mean? And he's just getting beat by these little old dudes because they know these catch tricks, these hooking tricks that he's never seen. So they start to pump out other guys like a guy named Tommy Moore, who wrestled under the name Jack Dempsey, which is horribly confusing. It's not the American boxer. It's the English wrestler Jack Dempsey, whose real name is Tommy Moore. Or Jimmy Niblett, or Ernie Riley, who was Billy Riley's son. Guys like Bert Azarati, who was like a big freak. Like Bert Azarati was like 5'9", well over 200 pounds, and could do the Iron Cross.
Oh, God.
And was apparently a malicious bastard. Like wanted to torture you.
Ugh.
Would like a mouse being pawed by a cat. You know what I mean? Like Bert Azarati was a bad, cruel man, but a hell of a wrestler. And these guys start coming out, and they start kind of realizing, much to the chagrin and also completely at the suggestion of Riley, there's no money in cups and medals.
It's
right?
only the prestige, right?
So they start kind of teaching people show wrestling. And this is how the Snake Pit becomes a place that is not only teaching the best hard men to hurt each other, it's also teaching them how to pretend to hurt each other for money. This has been going on for quite a while, like show wrestling in England. It's generally kind of attributed to Athol Oakley, Sir Athol Oakley, who did a lot as far as like formulating the rules of English wrestling, kind of trying like a strict set of rules and conditions. But also he was working and wrestling with guys like Ben Sherman from America, and they kind of figured out how to work, how to make money. Which again, about the same time as the Gold Dust Trio, a little bit later in the early 30s.
Okay.
They're kind of getting this system of like how to really work and make money and promote, and kind of turn this into something similar to what's happening in America as far as the system of
taking something
returns,
that's a little boring,
making it a little more interesting.
Yeah.
And wrestling there has like rounds, 5-minute rounds. They have cards. Like in soccer.
You get like a yellow card and stuff. Okay.
Little weird things. When you watch English wrestling from back then, the referee doesn't hit the mat. He just kind of bends down and he's like, 1, 2, 3.
It's a very
Len Denton. And like it's really like quite. They didn't quite catch the drama. But they're learning how to do all this stuff. And it's getting a lot of money into the pockets of guys like Len Denton and Bert Azarati. It's not really getting any money into Billy Riley's pocket.
Okay.
Billy's charging like 2 pence a training session in the 70s or something. Like he's just really doing it for the love of the game.
So it's still the promoters that are making the money at this point.
It's the promoters and the wrestlers are making like money. Let's say Bert Azarati is making good money. Carl Gotch certainly had some good years.
Okay.
But Billy Riley, the trainer, he's still doing it out of his shack because he loves to teach. He loves teaching young men how to beat the shit out of each other. You know, it's what he likes, and he's known as a complete perfectionist. Like you're gonna do it until it's perfect.
Yeah.
And people would say about him, like Billy would know you were going to make a mistake before you started making it. He would know from where you were in your chain, in like your cycle, that your next step was already wrong. So he would just be on you. And Billy Robinson would say like he was never told he did a good job.
Right.
He would win the championship. He would win a tournament, and he would never tell him he'd done a good job. And he asked Billy Riley one day, why don't you ever tell me like I'm doing good? Or like, why don't you ever congratulate me? He said, well, once you think you're good, you'll stop learning. I'm not here to tell you you're good. All right, Billy. Fair point.
Catch wrestling, like most grappling, like it is so specific, right? There is such a huge difference in between having your hand here or having your hand here, like the positioning, the way that it is. Yeah. So like, this position versus, like it is details.
micro level.
It really is once you get down to it, man.
And Billy was the best.
Yeah.
Billy Riley
He had that attention.
was the best trainer.
Yeah.
And there were other gyms, and like a lot of his students, Jimmy Niblett would go on to open a gym. Billy Robinson in the 70s opened a gym. People opened other gyms, even if it was just, we left town.
Yeah.
Got to have a gym. Got to have a place to train.
Of course.
Ted Bentley, like all these cats opening gyms. But Billy's is known as the all-in-all environment. Much like in pro wrestling here in Calgary, Stu Hart's gym, which actually is the basement of his house, and it looked very similar. It was a mat in the corner of a brick room, and there were some weights on the other side. Like there were there's puke stains everywhere because last week Stu made a guy puke. There are grown men's tears
everywhere,
littering this entire room. So he's training these guys. They're starting to make some money. They're starting to really travel.
Yeah.
But he's kind of, and it is a creature of his own design in a certain way. Billy's becoming quite disenfranchised with the state of wrestling because it's gotten so show forward. It's gotten so performance forward.
Too much work.
So much rigging. So much work. And it's to the point where, especially around the late 60s, you stop really seeing people wrestle like they're wrestling. In England and America, particularly.
Does it happen kind of around the same time?
It does kind of translate because you've got the same people doing it.
Right.
So if they traveled here, eventually they're going to come back.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? Like Tony Charles is going to come back from an excursion in Memphis and go, like, you should see the money they're making with Memphis by throwing a guy over the ropes and hitting him with a chair. So we should try that or whatever. What's really great? Throwing a guy against the ropes. You know what's impossible? To throw a man so hard against a set of ropes that he comes back to you.
That's just not a thing.
It's literally impossible. You couldn't do it to me. Get your biggest friend and ask him to do that to me. It's not going to work. I'm not a very big man.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Those ropes are pretty stiff.
Oh yeah, I used to get cable bruises. It looked like someone whipped me with a boa constrictor or something, just like
because they're the same as boxing, right? Like it's the same setup, but like are
people do different things. Like the WWF was known for using actual rope, which was a problem. They would just like paint a rope or wrap some tape around a rope, which wasn't good for like.
It's supposed to have give.
It's supposed to have a little more give,
elasticity.
But the ropes were not good for like people that got on the ropes. Wasn't very good. So what most people would use is cable.
Okay.
Thick cord cable.
Yeah.
That was a lot better. I would say neither one of them, it really didn't make a difference on like say your back and your lats and stuff. Like the bruising.
Yeah.
That was the same. It was more of like if you were going to try to jump on or over them.
You wanted more stability.
The cable was really a lot better.
Okay.
But the WWF also was known as having like their rings were like the floor. And like a real wrestling ring at its best should still be I've built many wrestling rings. It's iron and wood. But it's designed in a way that there's a bit of bounce.
There's a give to it, right? And it's also designed to make some noise too, right?
It makes great noise.
Right.
I mean, even if it's not part of the design, just the nature of it. Because what it would be, like, you get your four corners.
Yeah.
4 long posts. And then you have iron every, I don't know, probably 8 inches, 10 inches.
Dun, 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 dun.
You've got an iron beam that goes lengthway across the ring.
And then another...
And then you put plywood. And then you put a couple of layers of
some kind of foam.
Maybe like carpeting, like the kind of things that you would that they give you at U-Haul when you're packing.
The
blankets.
Yeah.
Couple of those, couple of layers of something like that, and then you put the canvas on it, that's something you can clean and hopefully not give your wrestler staph infections. That's pretty much all that is.
Jesus.
So like that's a hard ring, but the WWF rings, it was like they were doing it crossways or something, right? Like it was like there was no give. Or Mexican rings are known for that too, which is crazy because Mexican wrestlers do so much high risk stuff.
They do some insane
that
shit.
You'd think maybe they'd want a little more give, but anyway.
Sorry, that was tangent.
So Billy Riley shuts the gym down. He stops training.
This is at the 70s, like in the 70s?
In the early 70s, yeah. He stops training, and the shack gets quite run down. But at the same time that Billy Riley has stopped training, two of his best students are bringing Billy Riley to the world, and that's Karl Gotch and Billy Robinson, who are both becoming very in-demand wrestlers, particularly in Japan. India, South Africa, Australia, places like that, they had quite an influence. Yeah. America, not so much. Billy Robinson had a decent run in America. Karl Gotch, pretty early on in his pro days, beat the shit out of Buddy Rogers backstage, who was the world champion at the time, and kind of Buddy Rogers and Gorgeous George would be like the premier show wrestlers, working wrestlers.
Right.
They weren't necessarily capable in the ring.
Yeah.
Actually, Gorgeous George was pretty capable, and Buddy, I'm sure, like Buddy Rogers probably beat the shit out of a normal man,
but not someone like Karl Gotch.
But not Karl Gotch. And I don't know, they went sideways backstage, and Karl hurt him pretty bad, and kind of didn't do a lot in America after that. About 10 years later, I think he worked in New York, and he won a tag team title. But that's pretty brief. And also, Karl Gotch's style did not translate to America.
Because he was an actual...
Very fundamental heavy.
Yeah.
A lot of moves that we would see now have become kind of exciting staples in wrestling that you would not see then, or that just didn't translate. That the German suplex is named after him.
Oh shit!
He's Belgian, but whatever. It's
close enough for Americans.
Apparently, that's him. The Tombstone Pile Driver.
I've never heard of that.
The Underkeeper's move.
Yes.
The Underkeeper. Everybody.
We'll get back to we'll get to the Underkeeper.
So they're mostly working in Japan, and in Japan, their legitimacy is super important.
Because Japan's more interested in a little bit more of the fundamentals.
Yeah, Japan is more sports based.
Okay.
And a lot of that does come from Gotch and Robinson, these Riley trainees, because they go over there and they start training Antonio Inoki, and then the whole JWA, Japan Wrestling Association roster, and then Gotch is training the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster once Inoki kind of branches off. And these guys already, I mean, legitimacy, hard work, extremism, pretty important parts of Japanese culture when it comes to
anything.
Like dedication. They're dedicated and focused on a lot of stuff. This is certainly no difference. And they do crave legitimacy, and this goes all the way back to Riki Dozan, who, even though Riki Dozan was a sumo who was a total worked wrestler, he's kind of the guy who brought wrestling to Japan, along with the dude who played Oddjob in James Bond.
Right.
Whose name I can't remember. But he started partnering with Kimura, Masahiko Kimura.
Yeah.
Who, of course, is known as, the Kimura.
The Kimura.
He beat the Gracies, and he was a really, even though he was a jiu-jitsu practitioner, studied catch. He was traveling the world doing a lot of catch.
Yeah.
So they became tag team partners. This first big wrestling star from Japan who was actually Korean.
Really?
Yeah, he was Korean, and he hit it because of the rampant racism.
Yeah. Because he was Korean in Japan.
He was Korean in Japan.
Oh yeah, that was that was.
And he was a slightly unsavory fellow to begin with. And he brings Kimura in. Kimura starts working with him, and then one day he turns on Kimura in the middle of a match, and legitimately shoots on him, legitimately. Just kicks him and just hits him in the face and kicks him in the face while he's down, and just beats the piss out of him. And it's not cool to watch, and I don't understand how anyone
let it happen,
admired Riki Dozan for it. But I think in their heads they're just well, this guy just beat the best. So even if he did it in what looked like a brutal underhand way, he's the best. You know what I mean? So these guys crave legitimacy. And then you bring in someone like Karl Gotch or Billy Robinson who have legitimate credentials and are, Billy Robinson particularly, a lot of flair. Billy Robinson's got a lot of flair and a lot of style for someone who's also got that much substance.
Right.
Whereas Karl Gotch is kind of just like,
he's all work. He's all...
give me your arms, I'm going to break them.
Right. But not the most personality behind it.
Not the most personality, not the most interesting looking guy, but they called him the wrestling god. In Japan, he is the wrestling god.
Yeah.
And this starts to kind of build the legend of Riley's gym. And Karl Gotch coins the term snake pit.
Oh, shit.
Because he would describe training there like being in a den of vipers. You know what I mean? To his Japanese students. And it starts to travel around, and things happen like, so that they have like a giant, very popular anime called Tiger Mask about wrestling, where like there's a character based on Billy Robinson.
Oh, that's cool.
And his gym is called the Robin's Den. And then Tiger Mask's gym is the Tiger's Den. And it's the Snake Pit. So like this legend is building around there. And the style of catch is being taught to all of these new generation of the 70s and early 80s wrestlers coming up. And at the same time as this begins, Billy kind of gives up hope on the gym and abandons it.
Okay.
And he's getting old. But after a few years, one of his students decides to reopen the gym. Basically because his son and some other neighborhood kids want to learn catch.
Right.
You know, they grew up watching all these local heroes, working class heroes, catch wrestling. They want to learn. So
and I'm going to small side note on this, because as someone who's been training for a long time, just having the space to train is such a big fucking deal. Like when I was in Ottawa, even like before my wife, I would literally was walking around because I was training out of my apartment, this tiny little apartment. I just needed some more space, and I was like walking around the neighborhood trying to find like garages to rent or whatever. Like if you want to train, you just need this space.
You need a place to do anything.
Yeah, it's a place to put your mats down. I mean, that's pretty much it. But if you don't have it,
but you need a little more room than the storage closet.
Exactly.
So, Roy Wood, with a fellow named Tommy Hayes, they go and they rebuild the gym. They're not, I wouldn't say it's an improvement. They got it back to working shape. And they start teaching the local guys, and then they start teaching show wrestling again. So this is where like pro wrestlers like the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Tom Billington, who become really big stars in Calgary here, and then go to the WWF, and they're huge in Japan. And
they
train with Roy Wood.
Okay.
So after Riley and Billy, I guess like comes down now and then, helps out, kind of gives some tips and whatever, but he's not really training anymore. Roy Wood is training.
Okay.
And Roy Wood was a championship wrestler and a show wrestler, and very capable fella who to this day is one of the premier wrestling trainers in the world. So he's been doing this since 1976. 1976 is also the year that Billy Riley dies.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah. Born in 96. I think he dies in 76.
Okay.
So that's pretty good long life for a man who's all he's done is inhale coal dust and
smash men.
Fight. It's all he's ever done. It's all he's ever loved. He'd rather fight a man than love a woman kind of guy, you know? It's
a special breed.
I'd rather fight a man than love a woman.
It's quite quotes.
So now the gym's back up and running, and they're keeping Catch alive. It's a desperate move to try to keep Catch alive, but they're keeping Catch alive
because it is kind of dying out at this point.
It's dying out. It's almost an unheard of term in most of the world.
Yeah.
No one in America is talking about Catch as Catch can. Catch. It's really weird because in like Europe, like in Germany and France, professional wrestling is still called catch. Like that's the word for it.
Yeah.
The same way that like in Japan is like puroresu, which is just like a really bad Japanese translation of the phonetic words pro wrestling.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right. But it went from a heyday. So when would you say that Catch was kind of at its peak?
Probably the reigns of Frank Gotch.
Yeah.
Like the Frank Gotch, George Hackenschmidt days, which would be like the 1910s.
Okay.
And then the Goldust Trio days, which is the 1920s, because that's where they start to kind of phase Catch out
and bring in the pro right.
slam bang style. They're trying to it's almost kind of what they're doing is almost kind of like when Vince McMahon tried to stop calling it wrestling and call it sports entertainment.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it really broadens what you can get away with.
What you can do with
it broadens the genre.
Yeah.
And it kind of gets you out of a few. They're like, well, I didn't say that was catch wrestling. That's slam bang western style wrestling.
Of course.
Put that on a banner. That sounds what dignity that phrase has.
Like a 6-year-old birthday party.
And that. Yeah, slam bang westerns with Bozo and
that's it.
Little Bibby. So he's trying to keep catch alive. He's starting to kind of translate more to freestyle wrestling.
Okay.
Because freestyle wrestling is the thing you can actually compete in now.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, there's no catch tournaments.
Yeah.
But you can train in freestyle and go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to the Commonwealth Games and compete in freestyle. You can't put a toe hold on. You know, you can't. You can't fucking glide your forearm into a guy's cheekbone too much. They will catch you. So
yeah.
But at this exact same time, contemporaries of Roy, guys he trained with, Carl Gotch, Billy Robinson, they're in Japan and their students are getting a little tired of pro wrestling. They're getting a little tired of schmoz finishes like DQs. They're getting tired of doing things that don't make sense. They're getting tired of losing to people they don't think they should be losing to. Why is Bulldog Bob Brown from Manitoba get to beat you? It doesn't make any sense. So they start doing the offshoots. And that starts with the UWF. And the UWF was students... You know what? I would say it starts earlier than that. It starts with Inoki versus Ali, which we're not going to get too much into because that is a whole episode on its own. But Antonio Inoki, the premier Japanese wrestling star of the 70s, Riki Dozan, the man I was talking about earlier, gets murdered by the Yakuza.
Of course he does.
And his main mentor, or his main proteges, Antonio Inoki, who's Japanese, but he grew up in Brazil.
Oh, wow.
So he's very familiar with like Vale Tudo.
Okay.
And then a guy named Giant Shohei Baba, who's like a 6'8" Japanese baseball player.
Okay.
Who's the weirdest looking man. We're gonna need a picture of that, Jimmy, because he is the weirdest looking dude I've ever seen in my life. And Inoki is really interested in legitimate sports, and he starts doing this thing where he hire legitimate combat athletes to come in and lose to him. Right, so he would hire them for worked matches, but he'd be like, here's a judo champion, here's an American boxer, here's a sambo champion, here's a savate champion. And he's going to fly them in, he's going to give them a huge purse, and he's going to beat them. He's going to beat them. And then there's a few, like, there's this, you know, the very famous Great Antonio versus Antonio Inoki fight, where the Great Antonio was like a eccentric French-Canadian strongman who went over and stopped playing ball, and Inoki just, like, kicks him in the face until he's knocked out. Just like it's hard to watch. Although you're kind of like, well, yeah, he had to do that one. So he decides he wants to fight Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is the most famous athlete
on the planet,
in the world, maybe ever.
Yeah.
Like who's gonna rival Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan is the only person I can think of. Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
Joe DiMaggio. These are the only people that would ever like rival the fame of Muhammad Ali.
Agreed.
And Muhammad Ali is still a world champion. He's been going this is 15 years into his career, and he's still a world champion boxer, heavyweight boxer in 1976.
He's going to get into a wrestling match?
And he's going to get into a wrestling match for two reasons. An incredible amount of money.
Sure.
And Muhammad Ali loves wrestling.
Okay, I did not know that.
Loves, just like Mike Tyson loves wrestling.
I did hear that.
Muhammad Ali loves wrestling. They grew up watching, he grew up watching Gorgeous George. He openly admits that he took a lot of his interview game, a lot of his persona from Gorgeous George, because he learned that like there's a lot of money in making people want to see you get beat up. That's the money. Heels draw money.
Yeah.
Baby faces sell T-shirts. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of confusion about what's actually going to happen. And it ends up being like the most boring fight imaginable. Just there's conflicts of style. Inoki thinks it's going to be a shoot. Ali thinks it's going to be a work. They're very confused about this. They make all these silly rules, and it pretty much ends Ali's career.
Really?
Circumstances we will get into another day. But it's not a success.
Okay.
It's a horrible fight. But it does inspire a lot of Japanese wrestlers to want to go out and fight for real.
Okay.
Or at least make it look like they're fighting for real. So they start the UWFI. This is guys like Fujiwara, Akira Maeda, and they're trained by Karl Gotch.
Right.
The UWFI lasts a few years, shuts down, and then you get Shuto opens, which is Satoru Sayama, the man who went on to play Tiger Mask, which was like a masked real-life version of this cartoon character.
Right.
That was
From the anime.
that was largely inspired by Billy Robinson, and it takes inspiration from the Snake Pit.
That's cool.
So he starts Shudo in '89, which is shoot fights.
Yeah.
This is for Shudo, shoot fighting.
Takedowns, open hand?
It's probably open hand. I don't know the exact rules of Shudo, because shoot fighting is a broad sense. Even when I was a kid in the 90s, UFC was called shoot fighting by most people. Because shoot just means legitimate. They're shooting. They're going.
It's the opposite of work.
It's the opposite of work.
Right.
Carny stuff. Carny terms. He starts Shudo in '89. That's 4 years before the first UFC.
Yeah.
And then Akira Maeda starts Fighting Network Rings, which starts out as worked shoots, which means like it's a predetermined match, but they're making it look as real as they can. They're hitting each other quite hard, and they're using legitimate moves.
Yeah.
And then eventually becomes actual shoot fights after the popularity of UFC and things. Pancrase. Suzuki starts Pancrase with Sakurada.
And Pancrase is definitely, that's kicks, grappling, open hand strikes.
Yes.
Punches to the body, open hand strikes to the face.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
And submission.
And submissions, all the submissions.
And that's where Ken Shamrock comes from. Bas Rutten, Frank Shamrock.
I just watched a Bas
Maurice
Rutten
Smith.
fight. Yeah, his.
Yeah, so these guys all kind of come out of that, which is, I mean, Ken Shamrock is a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Ken Shamrock went to Japan and learned this stuff after training to be a pro wrestler. His name was like Vinny Tomarelli or something.
The V.
Oh God, what a freak too! He was made to be marketed, right?
100. He looks like he was made in a lab.
He does look like it's so much steroids, so much steroids. And you know, so you've got Nabuhiko Takada, who does the UWFI, and then does basically Pride is invented for Nobuhiko Takada to fight. In the same way that the UFC was invented for Gracie's to fight. All of these guys are being trained by Gotch and Robinson.
Imagine the impact. So that's what I'm saying. The impact of this little gym is just spreading literally all over the world, which is why, like, I mean, this happens in other places
incredible.
for sure, but this place in particular, it's bananas.
It's incredible. And they start bringing out Roy Wood from England to help train in Japan. And then the UFC starts, and that blows up. And now the Snake Pit goes from an underground wrestling fans in Japan know about it.
Yeah.
To being like an international gym that's not teaching catch. It's just teaching freestyle.
Right.
Roy Wood will be brought into Japan to teach catch to these professional wrestlers.
You're right.
But he's just teaching freestyle because catch is not worth anything in England. There's no competitive forum for it, and it's not really getting him a lot of, like, he's not getting recognition for it because the incredible marketing of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has dominated mixed martial arts. And I mean, catch has only been making a resurgence in the last few years as something that people know about and respect, largely thanks to guys like Josh Barnett.
He's one of the pioneers. I mean, his coach.
Erickson.
Erickson.
Eric Paulson.
Eric Paulson. Jesus,
It's a very confusing name, Eric. Come on.
Help us out a little.
Come on, dude. So Danish.
I love him so. I
So
will have
Danish.
him at my gym at some point in my life.
Oh, you should, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Add a lot of prestige to him. Get
my
him to come
God.
in for a seminar. I think that's
man.
a great idea.
No.
You can't get Billy Robinson.
No.
You know, like the... Ooh, I wish I had met Billy Robinson.
But that is one of the coolest things about MMA these days is that it's still so small, right? Like I can go and I can actually get Eric Paulson, who is one of the legit greats. Like, and it's like you can't go get Gretzky or you can't get you can't get fucking Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I can actually have access.
Those
to
Gretzky and Tom Brady made enough money to actually retire.
Yeah.
These fighters, especially
they're
guys
still
who are
going. Yeah.
Eric Paulson's greatest success was in Shudo.
Right, he was a shooter champ.
He was
the first white person to ever win in
Yeah,
shoot.
and I think he was the
belt.
last Shudo champ.
Oh,
or something.
really?
I think he
Before
might have
closed?
retired
Okay,
the belt.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. He wasn't making that much money.
No.
Doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I mean, prelim guys aren't making a lot of money now fighting Dana, are they? No.
No, they.
Yeah, bastards. But these guys aren't. Even someone like Sakuraba, who...
We better have an episode on him.
Oh, we got an episode on
Yeah,
Sakuraba.
yeah,
We
yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
Sakuraba, who trained in catch wrestling
Of course he did.
with these guys, these pioneers of early MMA, 100% on the Gotch Robinson influence,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
the Riley influence.
Yeah.
Like, there's a
Bananas.
direct line.
Like right there. Yeah.
But Sakuraba does not go to the ring representing catch wrestling.
No.
He goes to the ring representing professional wrestling, which is one
That's
of the
like
things
his-
that people really talk about a lot with him. Sorry, there are some dogs
Yeah,
outdoors.
they're doing their thing.
Dogs tend to do dog things.
Yeah.
Bud, take it easy, buddy.
You
You're
got
all
this.
right.
Yeah.
But he's going out there representing pro wrestling, which is a great marketing tool because no one thinks a pro wrestler is gonna go in there and
fucking-
crush
yeah.
everyone. But he did.
He definitely did.
But he didn't crush them using pile drivers and power bombs
No, it's like
and
Ankle
Stan
locks
Hansen clothesline lariats. You know what I mean? He's using catch wrestling and jumping on people's heads. He did a lot of jumping on people's heads,
that's a good technique.
which I don't think you can do anymore.
Well, Pride shut that down.
No, it was blood sport. Not Josh Barnett's blood sport. So focus on freestyle.
Yeah.
And catch just disappears, basically.
Yeah.
Until Roy's daughter, actually, in the 2000s, convinces him to, like, you're letting catch die. You're the last guy.
Right.
You're the last guy. So then they introduce catch back into the curriculum. Catch is back on the menu.
Right.
And
So they're doing both. They'll do freestyle.
they're doing
they'll do
freestyle,
catch.
and,
Yeah.
and he's still coaching freestyle to the point where I think the 2012 Olympics, he was the head coach for Guam.
Jesus Christ.
You know what I mean? He's coaching freestyle wrestling for Olympic and Commonwealth champions, British champions.
He's at that.
I think he got the MBE last year, the New Year's. He was honored by like England for his contributions to sport and like youth athletics.
Jesus.
Because he's been doing this for 50 something years now, and he's very good. But he brought catch back, and it would be unfair not to mention the importance of Josh Barnett
Please.
in
Yeah.
this, because Josh Barnett's
Huge.
especially with Billy Robinson gone now, the #1 ambassador for catch wrestling. And the most successful catch wrestler besides Sakuraba, as far as being mainstream wins, mainstream titles.
Yeah, well, he was the youngest UFC champ,
Yes.
youngest UFC heavyweight champion of all time. Yeah, and just absolute one of the absolute pound for pound best in his day.
And still a great fighter.
Yeah,
And also someone who really represents professional wrestling, which I appreciate. He does a very good job representing professional wrestling.
because that's what what's it called? He's doing he has his own organization.
He does Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, which is like
semi-work.
couple times a year. It's 100% worked.
Okay.
But the point is, to make it more like early mixed martial arts where there's styles clashes.
Oh, cool.
And they do they take the ropes off the ring.
Shit.
So you're not going to see any fake ass Irish whips.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
okay.
Like they make it look a little bit more like it's a simulated fight and not like a gymnastics routine.
Okay.
Because gymnastics routines are what has ruined wrestling. Thank you, the Young Bucks.
We'll get into that, I promise you.
Someday.
I want to be on that. I fucking hate
I'll fight both. I'll fight both you Trump supporting little pricks any day you want. Yeah. So, oh, sorry. You know what? Earlier I said Suzuki and Sakurada started Pancrase. That's not true. It was Suzuki and Funaki, Masakatsu Funaki. So I'd like to make that correction.
Sure.
So he brings back Catch, and now since 2018 they've been holding annual Catch championships in Aspel, which is another thing that has to be said. In the 90s, they did another, late 80s, early 90s, they did another documentary about Riley's gym, and they saw the bleeding state of it. It wasn't good. So there was a government-funded rebuild, and they rebuilt it.
Now it looks like an actual gym.
They rebuilt it in a neighboring town, Aspel, which is still in Wigan County.
Okay.
So it's a completely different building. They actually sold, the person who owned the land that Riley's gym was on sold it for development or whatever. So they moved the gym. So it is a new gym, but it's still the lineage.
Okay.
It's still Roy Wood
Doing his
overseeing
thing.
everything.
Damn.
So I would say it still counts as the Snake Pit, if not Riley's gym.
Okay.
But the lineage is still there as much as the Madison Square Garden that's standing now was built in the 20s.
Right.
It's not the Madison Square Garden of the 1910s and the 1890s. I think it's the third Madison Square Garden, actually. It's still Madison Square Garden.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but in martial arts and in all of this, lineage is so important, right? Because there isn't like, if you say you got a black belt, where you got that black belt from is kind of dictating, there's a difference in between getting a black belt from Joe Schmo and the Gracies, right? Yeah.
It's the same as like wrestling school. Like I went to wrestling school, like barely. You could barely call it a wrestling school. We didn't have a ring.
Okay.
We bought a ring after I was kind of done training and I'd started working. I trained on gym mats on the floor. That's how I learned how to.
High school gym mats.
That's where I learned how to bump. That's where I learned how to do all the holds. I didn't learn how to run the ropes until I got in the ring for my first match. But it was, the thing about it was called Body Slammers Wrestling School, and it was technically Al Snow's school. And Al Snow was a big professional. Well, he was like a mid-level professional wrestler in the 90s and early 2000s.
Gotcha.
Lots of TV time, lots of experience. He'd work with The Rock, he'd work with Mick Foley.
Jesus. Okay,
so he was a star. He was a known commodity in wrestling, and a great trainer. He trained. He was the head trainer for the WWE for years.
Oh shit.
So like a very respected trainer. I met him once.
Because he would just have
and it really
training.
didn't have anything to do with the school. So he sold it to one of his students when he got a big WWE contract.
Yeah. But it's still his.
But like you'd still be like, well, people who trained at Body Slammers. Steve Austin did 2 weeks at Body Slammers.
Right.
Kane, the mayor of Knoxville County, did 2 weeks at Body Slammers. So when it's being when we were advertising the school,
you could
train at the same school as Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kane and D'Lo Brown and like all this stuff. But like my trainer was a good trainer. I got nothing against him.
Yeah.
But I did not go to a good school.
Okay.
It's not the same as saying you went to Lance Storm School in Calgary.
Right.
Where and I've worked guys from Lance Storm School. They were better trained than me. There was no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There was no doubt about it. So it's the same. Yeah, who'd you get your black belt from?
Yeah.
Who did your wrestling training?
Yeah.
And the lineage is everything because you didn't reinvent anything. Like people treated Sakuraba like he was some sort of idiot savant.
Right.
He wasn't. Right. He was an accomplished amateur wrestler in Japan who then trained catch with these guys that were trained by the best.
Yeah.
Ever. It's the same as
superpower.
Music is the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
great point.
Everyone's stealing.
Yeah.
You didn't do it first.
No one made up
and,
a G.
Like you should be able to. You can trace Led Zeppelin back. You can trace everybody back to Robert Johnson.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And you can trace, Van Morrison. There's a direct line to Jelly Roll Morton. You know what?
No idea what but sure.
He sings about it. He's admitted it. There's a direct line from Pearl Jam to Neil Young. There's a direct line from, you know...
Yeah,
there's a direct line from Muddy Waters to Elvis.
There's nothing new left in the world, right?
And it's important to acknowledge this stuff, right?
That's the only shitty part. If you pretend like it's yours, if you could pretend like...
You got to give credit where it's due.
That's it.
There will be links to some of the things I studied. Because it's not like I just found all this out. I didn't do the investigative journalism for this. I read some books. I watched some videos. I've tried to narrow it down a little bit. But, it's very important, the lineage. And I think it's starting to come to light now. But I feel like for a long time, Riley's gym, Billy Riley, especially Roy Wood, because even when Roy Wood was running it, it was still Riley's gym. Everybody talked about Billy Riley, which makes sense because everybody talks about Robert Johnson, and not a lot of people talk about, the people that came after him that maybe did just as much. For nobody talks about Little Walter. Everyone talks about Muddy Waters.
Of course.
The Little Walter was very important.
Right.
You know what I mean? Nobody talks about Steve Marriott. They only talk about Rod Stewart. It's kind of bullshit. Steve Marriott was better. So, Roy Wood technically has accomplished a lot more.
Yeah. Than even Riley.
Than Billy Riley did.
Yeah.
He's sent people to the Olympics. A lot of them. And I think Roy Wood is starting to get his flowers, and that's really good. But I still think a lot of people don't understand. This is the actual through line. Like, if last episode we talked about the people that really learned how to work.
Yeah, and get that.
This episode, we're talking about the people that really learned how to fight.
Right.
Like, the people that came from the work and turned it back to a fight.
Right.
And the highway, the Trans-Canada starts here and it ends there. This highway starts in Wigan.
Right. It ends up all over the world.
The most influential, a guy like Randy Couture, who I would say, especially I think Randy Couture is a very patriotic man.
Agreed.
Would probably say that American catch wrestling is his bread and butter.
I think I've heard him say that in an interview.
Yeah. And Greco-Roman.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of that American catch wrestling, that's Lancashire catch wrestling.
That is directly.
That is straight up Lancashire catch. That was adapted. And you can't take away anything from Frank Gotch.
Yeah.
Except for that he's a dirty bastard. But who ain't?
But that's part of what we're trying to do here, right? Is give credit to catch wrestling for because it has such a huge influence, but for a long time it has been fairly unrecognized in the impact that it's had.
Yeah, it's definitely lacked recognition. It practically became a dead term. It was like Latin for a while. Nobody knew what catch wrestling was. It didn't register with people. It didn't exist because catch wrestling wasn't something that actually had an impact on a day-to-day basis as far as being like an active sport. No one was doing tournaments for catch wrestling. Catch wrestling isn't in the Commonwealth Games. It's not in the Olympics. It's not in the NCAA. It's not at a college level, which is partly because it's brutal.
It's pretty.
It's really brutal. It's not something a lot of people would want their kids doing, and partly because pro wrestling killed it deader than a doornail.
Sure.
But I think now is the time to start celebrating catch wrestling for what it is, which is maybe the best all-around combat style. Certainly the toughest combat style.
Well,
and a precursor to the things that it's a precursor to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
It definitely
it has just as much influence on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as Japanese Jiu-Jitsu does. It's got a huge influence on judo.
Interesting.
And judo has a huge influence on it.
Of course.
And the same thing with Pelwani. You know what I mean? In India. Catch wrestling is gumbo. It's everything. Catch wrestling is not afraid to sorry, how did that guy from India beat you?
Yeah.
That's a catch move now.
Yeah. That's ours now.
He's never beaten us with that again. That's us now.
Well, like even if I may, like I'm training with gentleman Barrett, and he's been doing BJJ for about a year and a half. And without me saying anything, he just happened to find catch wrestling about a month ago. And he's absolutely obsessed. He's absolutely, that's basically all we do is train. All we do is catch wrestling. We do a ton of work from the turtle. We do just a ton of very traditional catch wrestling styles. And he likes it so much because he's like, oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is beautiful. Right, I think that's kind of the point. There is like this, like there isn't real art to it. It's meant to be flowy, and you know, you're just transitioning from one position to the next, and you know, as soon as he started breaking some of some of the same moves, but from a catch wrestling perspective, it just made so much more sense to him. Because in catch, it's just if it works, we use it. We want the simplest, most brutally effective.
It's the foundation of like a Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That is my style, by the way.
Yeah, and Bruce trained with Judo Jean LaBelle.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's insane.
And learned some catch wrestling.
He did. He had a grappling game.
Yeah, because even though Judo Jean LaBelle was a judo guy,
he also
hell of a catch wrestler.
Yeah.
So it snuck into that.
Yeah.
It snuck into Jeet Kune Do. It sneaks into everything because it's so effective. And because it was generally, for a lot of guys, when there were styles clashes, like that was the style you couldn't beat. You couldn't beat those guys. You couldn't beat the catch guys.
Well, I'll explain a little bit why. Even if you look at BJJ, they kind of shun leg locks to a degree, right? They didn't like some of the stuff. It is pretty high risk. We're going for
a lot of room for injury.
And the injuries come, and you're talking about tearing ACLs and this kind of stuff. It's serious stuff, so you definitely have to be super careful. But that's one of the differences, is that it just catch has all of these other options where people be grappling normal, and all of a sudden they'll just reach out and just grab some random limb and just break it. It's so.
And you know, these are carny guys too, right? Even though they're not traveling carny guys in the American sense, like these are guys that, like, if you piss them off, don't let them shake your hand after. Don't let them apologize and shake their hand, because they're gonna break your thumb before you even know.
Yes.
Like these are hard, dangerous men who bite and fish hook.
Yeah.
And then when they're done, they have a beer together and they go back down the mine. You know, it's pretty.
It's a life, man.
Yeah, it's a hard life. Like, think about being in a state where your job is so hard, you would rather spend 10 years training at Riley's gym to get good enough to go fight for money, because that's a lot better.
Well, that's why boxing's been so famous for so long, right? It's a
way out.
It's a way for poor people to get out.
Yeah. Boxing is. I think I maybe mentioned this in the last episode, but is like a great barometer to see like the new immigrant culture.
That was on the. Say it again, because that was actually on the first one. So
was it? Yeah. Like, it was always kind of a great way, like, see what the up and coming new immigrant culture was.
Because when the Irish were getting their ass kicked, I mean, you got, all of a sudden you have all these amazing Irish fighters.
These great Irish fighters.
The Mexican fighters.
John L. Sullivan, and then it's the the Jewish immigrants. Then it's the Italians.
Of course.
Then it was the blacks.
Yeah.
Then it's the Latino community, and then like you can kind of see them coming. It's not the same anymore, but even there was kind of a time where it was like Filipino and Latino fighters.
Sure.
Were just like They were the baddest cats there were. You know, those super exciting lighter weight fights. Yeah. You know what I mean? Fast, bad dudes. Because these guys needed to get out, and it makes sense.
They had nothing, and they were really trying to.
There's a great way to move on up, and it's fighting for money. Fighting for money. I wasted my life, guys. Should have tried harder. Should have done more fighting for money.
You wouldn't have been able to write all those words, so.
I'm not doing a great job writing these words. I don't think there's a lot of money in this. Please prove me wrong.
No, we'll prove you wrong.
I will hawk cereal, underwear, ball shavers,
whatever you need.
Corn liquor. I don't care. I will not do a pharmaceutical company. Everything else
is good.
I'll take your money, Ray J.
He has a soul, so pharmaceutical companies can fuck
Give me that money, Ray J. So, that is a brief history of Riley's Gym in Wigan, the Snake Pit. I think Javi agrees with me. I'm sure Jimmy agrees with me, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Good to hear you back there, Jimmy.
Yeah. Eventually we'll get me like a third mic.
Oh yeah.
We'll get I'm sure we're picking you up good. I'm sure. I'm
sure. I've got a loud voice.
But I think Riley's Gym is kind of the it's the most underappreciated part of both pro wrestling and mixed martial arts history, even as its status as like kind of like a underground legend. And I was super stoked to talk about it. I had a great time reading about it. And
there's 3 of them now, isn't there? There's one. There's UK. I know there's one in the States for sure.
There's one in the States that's accredited.
Yeah.
And then there's the one in Aspel that Roy Wood is running. The
flagship.
The direct inheritor of the Riley's Gym legend. And then there's the CACC Snake Pit in Japan. Yeah.
Right.
Which of course there is. Right?
Of course there is. I knew there had to be one more.
That's if it wasn't for the appreciation of the Japanese, no one would talk about it at all.
Yeah, probably.
It would just be, this is where Billy Robinson and Dynamite Kid trained.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
So I'm glad we got to talk about it, and our next 2 episodes are actually going to be kind of focusing in on a couple of the men that made Riley's Gym the international kind of mecca that it became. And that would be first Billy Robinson, and then I think we're going to get to Karl Gotch, the god of wrestling. Mm-hmm. That's it for us here in Calgary, Alberta.
Wait, I do. Hold on.
Hold on.
I did have, again, just a couple, again.
Okay. So these are some independent questions that may or may not
they
have anything to do with today's program.
Pass me the pen there for a second.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Not that pen.
Oh, this is legal here in Canada.
This is legal here in Canada. We wouldn't even know that it was weed. They just think it would be a normal vape.
What, you need to stop and have a vape of nicotine?
Yes, if you smoke.
What are you, a teenager? Only teenagers vape. What are you doing?
It's when people say that to me, like, when you come back to the UK, I'm like, when it's legalised.
That's it.
I'm not fucking
Legalize it.
I'm not doing that. I'm not getting into some fucking criminal's cars to pick up something that should just be available to me.
I'll tell you what,
100%.
Took all the fun out of it, though.
Yeah.
The only thing I liked about smoking pot was scoring.
It was the worst part of it. It was always the absolute fucking worst
I hated
part of
actually being high. I hated being high.
You just wanted to rush and fucking getting drugs.
Yeah, I just wanted to hang out. I just wanted to buy some drugs. And I didn't want to buy any drugs that were like...
drugs anymore?
I didn't want to buy drugs.
No, but I still trip out when I go over to like just go to the weed store and it's all beautiful and well lit and there's like all of these options.
I've only been inside one once.
Dude, it's what I loved about it, and the first time I came, is how fucking stereotypical every single person is in there. Like,
it's so true. They're always such a stoner.
I'm surprised someone's even going, hey dude. Like,
It's so
and
fucking
then I go in
true.
there, like, there's a guy literally just at that one, it's Spirit Leaf, and I fire like just 5 random like things I'm looking for. I'm like, I want it to make me like, he's like, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
He comes out like 6 options.
The sommelier with his...
Fucking literally.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to weed college?
And even I went in there and I was like, dude, I love that last one you gave me, Alien. And he goes, Space Race Atlantis. I was like, yeah, how the f-? And I was like, he actually showed me it. And I was like, yeah. I was like, how the f-? I was so off.
Yeah.
How did you know what I was talking about?
And the names, all of the names
yeah.
for the weed, like we all joked about like how, like if weed ever went legal, like who was going to name all the strains. And they do. The names of these things are fucking ridiculous. I was smoking Tiger Blood the other day.
Sorry, question. Sorry.
Okay, no. I just think pot culture is so fucking funny.
It is fucking hilarious.
It's so funny.
Okay, so as someone who is not really... Okay, I never really watched wrestling growing up. Don't have to explain why, but I was kind of against everything that was super manly. Obviously, wrestling's very manly, so I don't know. I think part of the... No? You don't think it's pretty manly?
Wrestling is drag for straight guys. It's the same. It's
I don't disagree, but
it's the same skill set. It's the same appeal.
oh my god.
Just saying.
So I part of what would be fun to do with this is I ask some questions about wrestling that any real wrestling fans would know. So like, what is with the Underkeeper, or as his actual name is Undertaker,
the Underkeeper.
So I was. Undertaker, what is with the because the Undertaker's been around since I've been a kid, and he was so how many Undertakers have there been? Like what's with the?
There's been one Undertaker.
There can't be one person.
His name is Mark Calloway. The same guy. You can see a huge progression. Like, it's easy to. When I was a kid, I remember it was like the Ultimate Warrior died.
Okay.
There's a new Ultimate Warrior, but they just took him off the gas, right? Like, he just had to stop doing steroids, and he looked so different.
Oh, they tried to make him a different person?
Well, no, he was still the Ultimate Warrior. He just lost so much size, and he got a haircut. And, like, everyone was like, well, that's not even the same guy. You know, like, that can't be the same guy. No, it is. That's just, he's not on enough fucking gas to choke a horse anymore. You know what I mean? And fuck that guy. Fuck the Ultimate Warrior. The Undertaker...
Wouldn't he be like 90 by now? Like, what?
He's old. He's done now. He is done.
He's done.
But he's only been done for a few years.
Really?
Yeah, but for the last few years, he would work once a year.
Okay.
He would do a match at WrestleMania because everyone wanted to see it.
Yeah. He's like, what, like 6...
He's like 6'9", 6'10".
Something ridiculous.
Big guy. Right? Big guy. But every time you saw The Undertaker, it was The Undertaker, except for that time in 1994 where they had the fake Undertaker, and then The Undertaker fought The Undertaker.
Because I do remember something about that.
And that was really bad, and we don't need to ever watch that. That will not be something we watch. If we do any bonus content, watch along.
We'll not be watching.
I don't think I could get through it. But the same guy, but he was really smart in that he reinvented himself pretty frequently. So he would change his look.
Okay, so...
Every few years...
It's a different Undertaker.
It's still The Undertaker. It's still the same guy doing The Undertaker.
Yeah.
But he would change his outfit. He would change his hair to kind of suit the times.
Okay.
And then as he got older, so at one point, he was gone with an injury and he came back and he wasn't the undead Undertaker anymore. He was just like a biker. Okay. Like he rode a Harley to the ring, the American Badass Undertaker. And he wore like a bandana and leather pants and he rode a motorcycle to the ring and he, talked shit, and he didn't pretend to be dead while he did it.
Because did he even talk back in the day? Didn't he just stare? Wasn't that he didn't even talk
for like a while? Like he would just had like his catchphrase, "Rest in peace," and then he had his manager Paul Bearer,
talk for him,
who would talk for him.
Okay,
and then eventually he started doing some talking, and then in the 90s for a while he was kind of like a satanic cult leader more than he was like a dead Undertaker. And then he was the biker. And then when the biker thing ran its course, he came back as the dead Undertaker.
Okay.
And then the dead Undertaker suddenly started doing like a lot of MMA stuff. Like he started doing like a lot of boxing and triangle chokes. Yeah, he started wearing the gloves, like the half gloves, and like... Wow, I haven't thought about it.
It just seems from the outside, it just seems like such a crazy...
way of making things work, though.
Yeah,
that's what,
he was perfect.
Like, he isn't someone you would remember for shooting a promo at all.
Right.
But it was the little things he did, like even the entrance.
Yeah.
It's just so...
the entrance
the way
is...
his entrance pulls you in.
Yeah.
The drama of it and the intent, like, even though it's slow, it's intense.
Oh, yeah.
It's dramatic. And it just that, and then the way it goes dark and then lights up as he takes his hat off. It's just the theater.
It was a pure theater.
That's what it is, and that's almost more special that he could do that. It has that much of him doing so little. It's the tiny things he's doing.
It's so
because he's 6'10", he does things that most people who are 6'10"
just can't do.
He's very athletic.
He'll jump over ropes and like clothesline front flip into people. He does insane maneuvers for someone of his size.
And he's also someone who his gimmick made him a boring wrestler at the beginning. Okay. Because his gimmick was he was a zombie, basically.
Right.
His gimmick is
unstoppable.
So he didn't move fast. He didn't do a lot of interesting stuff. He had a couple interesting things, but his matches were very plotting and stuff. He always credits Bret Hart, local boy, with being the kind of the guy who he could get in the ring with and start to have like good wrestling matches. because Bret Hart was such a good wrestler
that he could make him. He would make him look like a better wrestler.
Like that, and it was believable that Bret Hart could actually like wrestle him. Because a lot of guys, it didn't make any sense that you could. How could you possibly wrestle a dead giant? You can't wrestle a White Walker.
That's it.
You need a sword. You know, like you need
a gun.
You run and you punch. That's what you do.
Yeah.
So like, it got to the point where when I was in high school, The Undertaker had some of the greatest wrestling matches of all time, and he's pushing 50, and he's 6'10", and he's beat up.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I just
a freak.
assumed this must have been multiple people. There's no way that one dude has been going.
One extremely smart, extremely talented dude.
Wow.
And like, I don't know, like, I'm not saying his IQ is extremely high. He's not a dumb guy by any means, but he's just, he understands wrestling.
And found his niche, because he's got to be one of the most successful wrestlers of all time.
No one's had like
his kind of longevity.
Yeah.
The only person who ever had that kind of run, Hogan.
Would be
Hogan, but like Hogan was
he
like
still had a TNA run. And
he did a lot of embarrassing stuff.
Down. He was always at the top of the team.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah,
Hogan still had moments where he had to go away. We call it like go away heat. Where it's like we just don't want to see you anymore.
Even when Hogan was the head of the NWO in the '90s, right?
Yeah.
Like Hall and Nash were the cool. Like Hogan was piggybacked onto it. You know, I mean, like Hogan wasn't cool.
He wanted to get on.
Hogan had his ups and downs. I'm sure.
And
but
then,
you're right. That's the next closest one. For sure.
Wow.
Hogan never became a guy who was going to give you the best match of the year.
Yeah.
Like the match with The Rock was super exciting for like just an atmosphere sense, and like Hogan had good matches in the '80s and stuff, but they weren't like. You weren't ever like, wow, what a performance from the immortal Hulk Hogan.
You just remember the finish.
Yeah, you remember the finish and the back rake and the point.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, The Undertaker, just a wrestling freak of nature.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
A very...
very impressive.
Very much the same man.
Fucking nuts.
The whole time.
All right, next question. So, even though I didn't like wrestling... There was I'm not sure when the movie came out, but Ready to Rumble came out in the mid '90s or something like that.
99, I think, 2000.
Something like that. I owned this movie. I loved this movie. I had it on VHS and I had it on DVD. Just fun romp, whatever. So David Arquette is, for those who don't know, it's like a movie about wrestling. So you probably know the story a little bit better.
I've never seen the movie.
Okay.
But it was a movie very heavily about WCW, World Championship Wrestling, which is a now defunct wrestling company that was kind of the WWE's main rival.
Okay.
Where Hulk Hogan and the NWO were.
Oh, okay. So in the movie, David Arquette and his
buddy or whatever end up wrestling.
And they're really trying to get their favorite wrestler, who's played by, I can't remember his fucking name right now, who is discredited to come back and be like, so they're helping a dude out. Yeah.
So as part of the promotion for this absolute mastermind named Vince Russo, who is
no sarcasm there.
Vince Russo is like, his reputation in the wrestling community is like if George Bush and Dick Cheney were the same person.
God damn.
Like everyone assumes like people, he's just as much of a buffoon idiot as George Bush, and he did just as much bad as Dick Cheney.
God damn.
Like he killed the WCW, and he very, very easily could have killed the WWE. And on several occasions, he killed TNA. They just won't go away. TNA just somehow survives. So he got this idea of like, okay, well, we're going to have David Arquette on the show to promote the movie, of course, and we'll have him get physical because David Arquette loves wrestling.
He does, yeah. He admittedly loves wrestling.
And you can do that with celebrities. They've always done it with celebrities.
Right.
Since the 60s. You know, and before that, they would just have another pro athlete come and get involved because at least that was believable. And then it's like, oh, we're going to punch out the mascot for the next town over's team. Or we're going to have a local radio DJ who gives us a bunch of promotion, and then he's going to be a manager for the match or something, right?
Of course. Yeah,
the ring announcer is Regis Philbin. So That's all fine.
Yeah.
Vince Russo's idea is, let's make him the world champion.
Yeah.
Let's make him the world champion. That was not fine. So they make him the world champion.
And wrestling fans lost their fucking
wrestling
minds.
fans and wrestlers.
And wrestlers.
Very upset. Very upset. And I don't know if you've ever seen David Arquette, dear listener, viewer. Not a big man.
Not an imposing individual.
Like, I'd say he's probably my size, but, like, less stocky.
Yeah.
And I'm not the world champion. And I'm not gonna be. So they give him the belt. They take it off him pretty quick.
Right.
But it's kind of... it's a nail in the coffin of WCW. It's embarrassing. And it's embarrassing to everybody.
So that's really what my question is. Could you explain a little bit more? Because we know
about
it's
why
a
it's
work.
embarrassing?
Yeah, we know it's a work. Like, why did the fans get so upset? Like, to me, this seems kind of par for the course in terms of how wrestling goes. As you say, like, this has happened before, but, you know, there was a huge reaction to this.
We all know that the Avengers aren't real.
What?
But if Thanos was played by Paul Rubin, Pee Wee Herman,
Sure.
I don't think it'd be the same movie.
Right.
The thing about wrestling, like everything else in entertainment, is that it runs on the suspension of disbelief. The suspension of disbelief is the important part. So you need to be able to captivate people enough for them to still want to watch it.
To buy into that world.
To buy into the world. If you know, remember in Game of Thrones where they forgot to take the Starbucks cup out of that shot?
There's a Starbucks cup.
Yeah, there's a shot where they're like sitting at a table and Daenerys has a Starbucks coffee cup. Like not even a reusable one, like the white fucking coffee cup.
That's great.
That's a big mistake.
That's a big mistake.
You don't want to do that. They didn't have Starbucks in Westeros, the fake place that never existed, in a time that never was. So
This is that.
you got to ride that line,
cup,
right? Like, you don't want to break the fourth wall. Wrestling got so into breaking the fourth wall. It shouldn't have. And this was the height of wrestling breaking the fourth wall. This is the height of the worked shoot.
Right.
Where people are pretending to be shooting. Where, you know, famously, like, Brian Pillman, who trained here in Calgary, starts, you know, referring to Kevin Sullivan as the booker man, because Kevin Sullivan actually is the guy who writes the TV. He books the matches.
Oh, okay.
And then...
Oh, I see.
And you know, the Bret Hart, the screw job, and Vince going on TV and saying that Bret screwed Bret because he didn't do the honors by losing on purpose, which is
Just
not...
crossing
the line, breaking the fourth wall, and you can only do that so much before you start hurting people's feelings. You're insulting their intelligence.
Right.
There isn't a world where Booker T, who is like a 6'4", 240-pound freak athlete, just a big, extremely athletic man who looks tough, who I think did some jail time as a teenager. Jesus. You know what I mean? Where he's going to lose to me. Where he's going to lose to David Arquette. Okay. Where he's going to lose to some Hollywood actor. And it's embarrassing for everyone, because the better wrestling is protected, the better the wrestling is.
What do you mean by protected?
Like, the more people treat it seriously, like, people have always given Bret Hart a really hard time because Bret takes himself extremely seriously and he took the business very seriously. But, like, now I think if you ever go back and watch a Bret Hart match, it's the best match. Right now there's a wrestler named Gunther, Austrian fella, who he's got like an Ivan Drago kind of vibe.
Cool.
They call him the Ring General. His types used to always say Ring Kampf, you know, like Ring Struggle, you know, and he's a hoss. He doesn't do anything flashy. Yeah. He doesn't do anything stupid. He doesn't take extra steps.
Yeah.
It's very serious, and he looks like a real competitor, and he's the best wrestler I've seen since Bret Hart. Straight up. Bret Hart versus Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13 is the best wrestling match I've ever seen.
We should watch that.
And, well, we're going to watch that. I want to watch it. I want to watch it right now. Because it, like, and I listened to an interview with Bret where he talks about, he's like, I stationed it like a schoolyard fight. I wanted it to look like the the captain of the football team is Bret Hart, and the number one kind of bad boy, other side of the tracks guy is Steve Austin, and they've had enough, and it's time for a fist fight. And it's the best. It's maybe the best wrestling match I've ever seen. It's certainly the best American wrestling match I've ever seen. So that's, even though we know it's a work, there's not a point in my life where I remember thinking wrestling was real. Never. Maybe when I was a little kid and the Underkeeper used to come on, and I would cry and run away from the television.
It was terrifying.
When I was like 3. But like, really, I've always known wrestling was a work. But I'm still insulted when it looks bad.
Okay.
Like, you ever go see a band that really sucks?
Unfortunately.
Even if it's free, it's insulting.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a performer, and I know it's hard to get up there, and I know that I've been the guy that sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm still mad when I have to go participate in it. If you're going to be a professional wrestler on the highest level, if you're going to be on national television
with a belt around your waist,
you better be good at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you got to be good at least at one part of it. You know, there have been wrestlers that were like all talk and no match. But you'd forget because the talk was you were so sure Thunderbolt Patterson was going to beat that man's ass that it wasn't a big deal that his matches were like it was like watching paint dry. You know, you could have a birthday waiting for the match to get exciting. So that's the problem with David Arquette. And David Arquette, for what it's worth, like in the
he tried, right? So because he
tried to come back.
He tried to come back, and he did there's a documentary, which is how
you saw the documentary.
There's a doc about all of this, how he did try to go back and do some like rough wrestling, and he apparently got pretty banged up. Like he got
he agreed to some stupid shit.
Yeah,
you know, like there's no reason. Because I think the problem with this David Arquette thing too is that like he's a mark, like he's a total mark. He doesn't seem like the most mature guy in the world. So he decides to sign up to like wrestle like a guy like Nick Gage, who's, you know, he's a deathmatch wrestler.
Oh god.
And he's notoriously reckless. He's got some drug problems. He doesn't seem to have any
restraints.
Any concern for the well-being of the person he's in there dancing with.
Jesus.
Which is a big part of the job.
Yeah.
You know, taking care of each other.
Of course.
And he's certainly not going to take care of this guy. There's a lot of press to be had and taking this washed up Hollywood actor and just brutalizing him.
Yeah.
So that was, like, I'm not going to say it was David Arquette's fault, but
do you think he pulled it back in the end? Do you think that he managed to come out? Do you think?
As a fan,
I
understand, of course, what he did it. It's like a dream. If you're
right.
a wrestling fan, you're going to be the world champion, even if it's for a week.
Who's going to say no?
A lot of us would say yes.
Yeah.
And also you've got a movie production company telling you to do it because it's promo for the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
David Arquette.
Choice taken out. I get why you go with it. But like you say, it's like almost equivalent for you, I'd say. Almost like if your favourite TV show, that season finale, where you get the builders for it, and then you're just like, that didn't make any sense, that sucked. You're like, that disappointing for you. It's like, because the guy he just beat, they want you to go back to believing he's a badass in a few weeks. Like,
and then so it just messes everything up.
Oh, it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to then come back. And it takes those guys a long time. Sometimes they have to reinvent themselves completely to like come back and
that's fascinating. Fascinating.
It's also one of those things too where it's like, oh, look at the storied lineage of this championship.
no, Arquette.
Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Harley Race, Lou Thez, David Arquette.
Why not give him like a mid card belt?
Right.
You could have done that. You could have given him
make him the cruiserweight champ.
Yeah, cruiserweight champ, and you would avoid all of that issue.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people would be like, he's about the same size as cruiserweight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense that he could pull a fast one.
Yeah, exactly.
But the guy, he's in there with guys who have like legs bigger than him.
Yeah, like
legitimately. You know, like it's, and it's not David Arquette's fault at all. I don't blame him. I would say it's almost like an even more insulting version of when CM Punk got in the Octagon. Which is like you know what? If you're CM Punk, you had the balls to do it, and you took the money.
But you
always wanted to. But when you got in there, it was fucking embarrassing for the sport, right? It was embarrassing for the sport. And CM Punk is like one of my favorite wrestlers ever. I think CM Punk is an incredible professional wrestler. And I applaud him for the balls
Yeah.
to do it twice.
Yeah.
You know?
It didn't get better the second time.
It got worse. Got worse. He was like 40. Never done it before.
He's that old.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. Wow.
CM Punk is a great in-ring performer as well, but like
Yeah.
it's his mic work for me, which is
Yeah,
what
he's a
makes
talker.
me love
Yeah.
him. But it's like
interesting.
that doesn't make you that doesn't translate to
doesn't.
me at all.
No.
Like,
No.
Brock Lesnar,
Dude
the
just
opposite.
fucking
Not
rock-
great
yeah.
on the mic, but was
Yeah.
a freak.
Just a
Yeah.
freak.
Yeah. You can't deny.
No.
We're lucky
Yeah.
we live in a society with laws, because if it was 1,000 years ago, he just conquers the world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just,
Yeah.
you're
None
just
of us
on a
would
fucking
have women.
horse. Yeah, that's it.
None of us would have a woman in our lives.
It's just he's
Not
just
a
his harem.
chance.
That's it.
Yeah. Maybe when he left town, one of us could have some women.
Sneak in there.
Yeah.
All right, last question, and we'll finish up. Now, this one's a little bit weirder. And not we're slightly off topic, but okay, the word work, right? So when I was working in Mexico doing timeshare, they would come up. They would have a word for lying. So if you went up to a table, because there was like changing, moving people around, trying to get the sale and everything like that. So I didn't get it at first, but they would say there's a lot of heat on that table. Like I'd hear them go like so, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? And then after a while, I figure out, oh, heat means they've lied about this, that, and the other. There's and I'm always just kind of curious about how some of the nomenclatures, how we kind of create these words or change the meaning of some of these words to kind of I don't know, take some of the sting out of it. Like the idea of work, instead of it's not fake, it's a work, right? So you're making these words. You know what I'm saying? Like with the carnies and everything like that, it seemed like there was a really big deal there. Is that like
It's
it's
very carny, because back in the day, like wrestlers would speak carny to each other all the time, and
it's almost like a language? Like...
It's Pig Latin. You know what it is? It's H to the Izzo. You know what I mean? Like it's for shizzle. You know what I mean? Like that is that is carny.
That's a great.
So
analogy.
a lot like generally Zeds, Pig Latin, kayfabe means like really it just means fake, but that's not how you'd use it.
Okay.
But so like a work, and the other thing about the term work is that you can't call it fake just because of how brutal it is.
That's what I'm saying.
Like now everyone admits that it's scripted and it's work, but you still can't call it fake because like
I did actually slam him on the floor.
Yeah, like people get injured all the time.
Like you
just knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah,
I'm still injured from the 3 months of training and 9 months of wrestling. I did.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm still injured.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I wouldn't advise for it. You know what I mean? Like it's so you can't say fake, and work is a very convenient kind of, and things were worked before that. I don't think wrestling invented the word work. I mean the
way it's being used here,
but it got really adapted, right? Or adopted rather. So like, and it's got kind of in the same way that certain words, gimmick,
or even heel, like
heel, which is an old term. I mean, I watched A Wonderful Life the other day. Like we're at around Christmas time, and the uncle refers to the banker as a heel. In The Grinch, he really is a heel.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So that's an old term.
Okay.
Now, babyface, I'm going to assume, very much carny specific.
And what the fuck does
so a heel is a bad guy, and a babyface is a good guy.
Oh, it's the good guy. Okay.
So a baby
on the poster or something like that.
Yeah, he's a babyface.
Yeah, okay.
The girls will come see him. You want him to win.
Right.
He's a babyface. He's a nice. He's he's a blue chipper. He's a white meat babyface, which is a white meat babyface is something you don't see anymore. Cody Rhodes is a white meat babyface. We haven't really had one on top since Bret Hart. Always comes back to you, Bret. We love you, buddy. We love you, buddy. So like a white meat babyface is like he's a cowboy with a white hat. He's a good guy. He does the right thing.
Knight,
he doesn't cheat.
Okay.
He doesn't cheat. He doesn't take shortcuts.
Right.
He works hard. And Cody Rhodes is perfect for it because, Cody's got almost 20 years in the business already. Probably about 20 this year. And he's got the lineage and he knows exactly how to work. He's been a bad guy. And he did little things like when he tore his a couple of years ago, he came back to the WWE after going and doing a lot of stuff and reinventing himself.
Cool.
And one of his first matches, he tore the pec off the bone. But he had a big match coming up. So he just went and wrestled the match with the torn pec. And his whole chest, right, is purple.
Yeah.
He has his like jacket when he comes out. And you can see he's quite laboured in his movement. And then he takes off, and you literally hear the crowd being like, oh my God. Because his whole chest is purple.
Yeah, and then he works...
And it's before the match has started. It's like a Hell in a Cell.
Yeah,
like,
it's a 30-minute cage match.
Yeah. And he's already showing you his pec is already torn off.
Yeah.
Before it started.
Yeah, it's very fake. Very fake.
The drama of that.
Yeah.
The slow reveal. It was like, fuck,
So now, how can you not like him?
Yeah.
That's a great white meat baby
Yeah.
face.
How can you not root for that guy?
You gotta root for this guy.
His dad is one of the greatest baby faces
and
of all time.
his dad is maybe the greatest baby face that ever lived. Dusty Rhodes.
The Miracle Dream.
He's the bleach bound with the star-spangled eyes who came here to do war with you in this century.
What? That's amazing.
Yeah. So well.
He was like a fat white guy with a lisp and a bleach blonde afro who dressed like a black 70s pimp and spoke with a lisp.
Love for African American women.
Oh my God. He was unabashed.
He was very passionate.
In a time where that was a notable thing to do in the South.
Then.
You know, he's a Texan. Made most of his money in rural Florida. He was, and he danced. You know what I mean? He would shake his ass at people and stuff, and he made more money than God. He was so popular.
This is 70s?
This would be 70s and 80s. Yeah. So a work is a catch-all term that you can say, okay, so it is a work, and if you're good, you're a good worker.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And then if it's real, it's a shoot.
Yeah.
And if you're good at that, you're a good shooter.
Yeah.
Or like back in the day, like a good hooker. Luthez was known, like he wrote his book, it was called Hooker, which eventually people stopped using for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Kayfabe is generally meant to mean, it means like protect the business. So you would call something like, if you were out at a bar and the guy you wrestled that night walked into the bar, you had to kayfabe, which meant
you had to pretend like you guys didn't know each other.
You pretended you didn't go near each other. You didn't acknowledge each other's existence.
Okay.
If you did, maybe for the rest of the night, even though you weren't going to acknowledge each other there, both of you every now and then, in front of everyone around you, will look at the motherfucker and
just mad dog a little bit.
You know what I mean? And then
you might basically have to keep it going. You have to keep the story
you got to
going.
Protect the business.
The reality is that guy is the one that's making you money every night.
Yeah.
Because you're getting the town to believe you actually hate each other. So they want to buy tickets to see that fight.
Of course.
There's a great story about how Ric Flair broke his back in a plane crash in the 70s. And the guy he was working with was a mentor to him, Wahoo McDaniel. And Wahoo wants to go check on him in the hospital, but they hate each other.
Oh, that's the script.
Ric Flair makes racist comments about him on TV, and they're whipping each other with straps, and they hate each other. They're busting each other open every night. So he goes in, and he's in panic mode, and he's worried about this young man who he's mentoring, who he's a friend of, who he works with, who's broken his back in a fucking plane crash. Johnny Valentine was paralyzed. He never came back from it, right? And the pilot died.
Jesus.
And he goes in such a panic and so frantic to see his friend. But these people who work at the hospital have been watching TV.
Yeah.
He thinks he's here to kill the fucking guy who's laid up in the hospital.
Of course.
And he's not making it any better because he's in let me in there.
Yeah.
Let me see Rick. You know what I mean? So, and then Tim Woods comes out, so basically, they were so good at kayfabe that they tried breaking it and it didn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Tim Woods saved wrestling is another story kind of connected to that. This is very similar, where it's kayfabe, or if you were walking down the hall. I remember when I was training, I would go set up the ring for Emile Dupree, who was a promoter in the East Coast forever. He was so fucking old when I was doing it. And his son, Rene Dupree, was in the WWE. So I'd be setting up rings backstage, kind of hanging out in the locker rooms and stuff like that after setting up the ring. And if a mark walked by, if a normal person walked by and you were in the middle of something, whoever saw him first went kayfabe. And that meant, we're not talking about the finish anymore.
Yeah.
Or like,
yeah.
kayfabe, get back in your fucking locker room, because the heels have a locker room and the baby faces have a locker room. And the girls' locker room, which I did walk into.
Accidentally.
No, trust me, it was an accident. It was... These were not WWE divas.
Understood. That's tactfully put.
I was 17 and I was frightened of all of them. So you have these great terms that's still a gimmick. A gimmick I get made fun of because I still do it, and I haven't, like, I had a espresso in the business. I didn't even have a cup of coffee. But I still refer to everything as a gimmick.
And what does gimmick mean in this context?
Like, a gimmick... So, in a real wrestling sense, a gimmick would be like, okay, the gimmick is your razor blade. The gimmick is the chair.
Okay.
The gimmick is whatever.
The ladder.
But, like, now, like, I'm behind the bar. I'm a bar manager, and hand me the gimmick. Two gimmicks on that one. It's just ingrained in me. So the gimmick is everything,
That's cool.
We were watching Rambo, and he gets the gimmick out, and he fucking obliterates these guys, right? Like, you know what I mean? So, like, the Carney was just, and I can't speak Carney at all. I just know a handful of words.
Sure.
But, like, I've hung out with the Cuban assassin in a locker room, and he's saying some shit to some other old man in there, Leo Burke or whatever, and it's like, okay, well, I have no idea what these fucking guys are. This works.
This is nothing. Yeah.
It certainly works, because it turns out throwing a Z in the middle of a word completely knocks me out of the conversation. You might as well be speaking fucking Farsi. Like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
But it is fascinating that just how language works, and that something like this just kind of, it basically just has its own language, right? Which is just, it's fascinating.
It's a mafia thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Too. It's protection. You gotta protect the
In-group,
family.
out-group,
You don't let people in. You don't tell your secrets.
Yeah.
You know
like
what I
a
mean?
magician kind of style.
It's like the mafia, but everyone's Don Gotti.
I don't even know what that means. I don't like mafia stuff.
Okay, he was the Teflon. He was a mob boss that was always in the papers. He was always trying to get attention.
Oh.
Where, like, generally, like, a good mob boss
they
wants to be undercover.
Yeah.
In wrestling, all you want is attention. You want to be a star. So